The following program is brought to you by Whiteman TV and Bruce Telecom.
Baseball Talk is brought to you by Lasting Memories Locker Room, downtown Hanover, where you will find incredible sports memorabilia, art supplies, and custom framing. Check them out online at lastingmemorieslockerroom.com.
And welcome to another episode of Baseball Talk. We got a good show lined up for you today, and we're getting ready to get into it. As always, I'm Paul Hillier, along with Steve Fitzsimmons and Andy Clark, and today we have a special guest on the phone with us, coming from, I believe, Florida, former Blue Jay Rob Ducey. And Rob, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Go ahead, Andy.
Nice. Yeah, so for our viewers and listeners there, Rob Ducey, first guy ever to play for the Blue Jays, the Expos, and our national team, and only 3 other people have done that. And currently a hitting instructor in the Philadelphia Phillies system. So how's it going down there, Rob?
It's been a very trying year for us. We've actually promoted quite a few guys to Double-A. So guys have progressed very well, but our backs are kind of against the wall. We're actually playing against the Dunedin Blue Jays the next 4 days. We're 4 games out, so we have to sweep them to move on to the playoffs.
Move on to the playoffs. Now, in your role as a batting instructor, I wanted to ask you, what kind of things with the players coming into the pros, what kind of things do you have them focus on? And are there any things you find you consistently have to steer young batters away from?
It's a combination of a few different things, whether it's the mechanical part of their swing that needs to be adjusted, or the mental approach, the planning and executing of a plan at the plate. So there's a combination of the two, depending on each individual hitting.
Now, Rob, you were born in Toronto but raised in Cambridge, and I was born in Cambridge and raised slightly elsewhere, but I lived there till I was almost 13 and played Preston minor ball, and I know you're well familiar with that. And I actually played with Jason Gooding, who you might know as well, that played up to Double-A, but you were a guy that we looked up to at that time, and you signed with the Toronto Blue Jays as a free agent, and for a guy that is from Ontario to sign with Canada's team, it must have been quite a thrill to become part of that organization at that time.
Oh, there's no question. They were no doubt one of the best teams in all of baseball at the time, and I was very, very fortunate to be a part of that. Being able to play with George Bell, Barfield, Mosby, Ernie Witt. Actually, Ernie is one of our traveling coordinators. He's a catching coordinator for the Phillies. So I get a chance to be with him quite often. Pat Borders is also a coach in our system. So we do have a strong Blue Jay roots here with the Phillies, with Pat Gillick obviously being a huge part of the organization.
Rob, when we look back at that outfield you just mentioned, a trio of phenomenal ball players, Bell, Barfield, and Mosby, I mean, it made it tough for you to break in behind those guys.
Oh, there's no question. It wasn't just them. It was the whole Blue Jay organization. Arguably, one of the best teams in all of Major League sports, and I was very, very fortunate. Really, really good players that I came up with and had to compete against, and I was just very, very fortunate. Even at the rookie ball level, with Eric Yelding, Darrell Landrum, Brian Morrison, names like that maybe some people have heard of, maybe some people haven't, but just very, very talented players.
Now, Rob, as a Canadian, not being able to play baseball year-round, at least in Canada, I know you went to Seminole Community College in Sanford, Florida, but did you find there was a learning curve just in trying to catch up maybe to the U.S. guys that were able to play, year-round?
Oh, there's no question there was a learning curve. It was a crash course in what you honestly didn't know about playing the game. But fortunately enough for me, we had coaching staffs that were very patient and just allowed you to go out and play and learn as you go. You almost trial and error, and you figured out what the best way for you to get from A to B was. And I think patience is a huge part of that learning curve. And if coaches don't have that type of patience, it's really difficult to get the finished product. And not everyone is on your timetable, so you really have to have patience with them. And fortunately enough for me, the Blue Jays had patience.
That they did. I mean, they've had a lot of interesting situations, but especially in the last couple of years with some players that are maybe doing more than they thought they could do, and then maybe some of them are doing a little less, especially this year, than what they thought. You had a couple of interesting situations. Your first big league home run was against Baltimore in '87, and that was a special day for a lot of us fans as well as the team itself, hitting 10 home runs that day, and that's never, ever been matched. Going back to your first game with the Blue Jays, do you have any thoughts on your feelings for that and what it was like coming out to the crowd in that first game for you?
Well, obviously, it was a tremendous feeling for me. It was a not necessarily a lifelong dream, but a dream that had developed over time. As I grew up, I didn't imagine myself being a Major League Baseball player. I know that a lot of kids in the U.S. grew up wanting to play in the big leagues. That really wasn't a goal of mine when I was growing up. I played fast pitch softball till I was 15, and then split a summer with fast pitch and baseball. When I was 16 was my first full year of baseball. It was when I played midget, junior, and senior all in the same summer, and kind of really fell in love with the game. But as far as the actual first game, I got 3 standing ovations. I was the first Toronto-born player ever to play for the Blue Jays, so I was kind of pretty intimidating. You know, as a young player, I think I was still 21 years old. I hadn't turned 22 yet, and it was different. It was a warm memory. I don't know whether I was emotionally ready for that, because the Blue Jays were good at that time, and it was a little bit overwhelming. I wish I was a little bit more mature when I got that opportunity. Maybe I could have taken advantage of it a little bit more than I did.
It's interesting that you say that, because a few weeks ago we had former Major Leaguer Joe Borchard on, and he actually raised some of the same sentiments that when he broke in, it was all happening so fast. And he said, looking back now, he would have liked to have just taken it all in, because it was pretty overwhelming in a lot of ways. Now, I wanted to ask you, too, about the 2004 Olympics. You got to represent our fine nation in baseball and that. So what was that experience like?
Obviously, the stage is a worldwide stage and totally different than Major League Baseball. I got a chance to, I think the opening ceremonies, being part of it, you don't really understand the true gravity of the whole situation. But looking back, and for me, just sitting in the eating room, or not necessarily a room, it wasn't a room, it was a big convention center that served the athletes meals, and I would just watch the athletes and be in awe of just what they looked like, and there was 3'8" gymnasts to 7-foot volleyball players. I mean, it was just incredible. I got a chance to sit at the same table as the Jamaican track and field team, and they won all the gold medals at that year. So I was in awe of the athletes, the true athletes of our world.
Did you enjoy that experience more as a player, or when you went back as a coach in '08?
It was different. I think I enjoyed it more as a player, because as a coach, I I was an Olympian as a coach, but when you're an Olympian as a participant, as a player, it's a different feeling.
Now, Rob, you had 31 career home runs. Interestingly enough, 2 of them against Hall of Famer Mike Messina. And you obviously had good success against a guy that was awful tough to get a hit off of.
Well, those were the guys that I had to play against. We have a somewhat of a ritual with our staff in Clearwater when scouts come in or other coaches come in with the organization. They come into the clubhouse and we pull up their stats, and we kind of rip each other a little bit and say, "Hey, you weren't that good," and all of a sudden now, you're telling players that that they stink. So we have a little game going on, and we have a chance to pull up who you faced a lot, and the guys that are at the top of my list are pretty good players, some pretty good right-handed pitchers, and with Roger Clemens and Kevin Brown. I think Messina, guys like that are the guys that I had to face a lot, because either they pitched on Sunday and I would play on Sunday day games, or the manager would give a right-handed hitter a day off, and I got a chance to play against those guys. So those were the guys you had to face. That's kind of the way it was. You had to, if you wanted to stay, you had to compete and perform against them.
And compete you did, and I'll throw another name out there. You had 7 career plate appearances against the legendary fireballer Nolan Ryan, and a .571 on base percentage. You had 1 hit and 3 walks. Pretty good stats against a pretty tough guy. What was that like to face such an intimidating force as Nolan Ryan, and a legend, really?
You know what? I think that if you get caught up in the awe of it, you literally don't have a chance. So you have to really focus and tell yourself that you're better than them on that particular day, even though the stats don't say that you're not, or everyone in the world knows that you're not on the same level as those guys. But if you go in there and think that way, then you have no chance to compete against them. So I used to just feel like I was better than everybody on the field, and and see what happens. The intimidation factor really wasn't there.
In the middle of your career, you took 2 seasons and played in Japan for the Nippon Ham Fighters, where you had 51 home runs over those 2 seasons. Tell us what that experience was like, being immersed in such a different culture.
I quite enjoyed it over there. It was the people were great. The travel was okay. Baseball for me was probably the most difficult part about being over there. It was almost like Groundhog Day each day. We'd go and we'd practice. They put hours and hours and hours of practice in, and that's probably why on the international scale they're so good, is because of how the regimented routines that they go through. Everything is very scripted, and the fundamentals, they hammer the fundamentals, and I enjoyed it there. I think that, again, while you're there, if you don't take advantage of scenarios that they may pass you by, you're there for eight months out of the year, and it can be a very, very lonely time, because the time that I was there, we only had 3 foreign players on each team. So at times it could be very, very lonely. But the way they went about it, as far as the team aspect of it, I think I missed that most of all. That was probably the most difficult part of it. The actual baseball, they probably had the best pitching that I ever faced on a day-to-day basis, because they had all their starters could throw 5 pitches for a strike. So it was very difficult as far as the pitching was concerned. But I did enjoy the experience.
Rob, you were traded from the Toronto Blue Jays in 1992 to the California Angels, and of course, as we know, the Toronto Blue Jays ended up going on to the World Series title. You must have somewhat mixed feelings about that whole thing, being a Canadian, being you were in that organization and they went on to that success without you, but you probably feel some ownership towards it as well.
I was there from, I made the team out of spring training, and I did not play very much, but I felt like I was a part of that team. I had, I think, more innings played defensively than I had at bats. We'd be winning 10-2, and I'd go in the seventh inning, play defense, and didn't get an at bat. It would just be that type of scenario. But at the beginning of May of that year, I went into Jeff Ross, the equipment manager. I believe he's still the equipment manager now, and asked for a set of catcher's gear. So I ended up catching the bullpens for the starters, so that Greg Myers and Pat Borders didn't have to catch bullpens. So I tried to make myself as useful as possible, regardless of how much I played. So I did feel like I was part of helping them, get to a certain point.
It's definitely a classy move, showing that kind of initiative. Now, you also, kind of an unusual thing, there was a period later in your career where you were traded from the Phillies back to Toronto, and then I think it was less than 2 weeks later you were back with the Phillies. Explain for our audience what went on then.
People say the Ducey for Ducey trade didn't quite happen like that, but it kind of ended up being that way. I think they just needed a place to put me for while Philadelphia was kind of restructuring. They traded Kurt Schilling, and it was like 7 days. It wasn't very long at all. I was traded. Then I was traded back, and I had to introduce myself to a quarter of the team a week later because they had made so many different roster moves. Actually, Terry Francona, who was our manager, he said to me when I went into his office, he said, "Oh man, I'm glad you didn't say anything about us when you left. So it would have been tough to get you back." Our general manager, I think, had a quote in the paper saying that we got back a more experienced player that we traded. So
Yeah.
it was kind of a I don't even know what happened. It just a very, very weird scenario.
Yeah, it wasn't like a New England Patriots where they sent you over there to find out what all the signals were and then come on back so you could get the playbook and bring it back. Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
So, Rob, you've received quite a few accolades over your career. You were inducted into the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame in 2013, and of course the Cambridge Sports Hall of Fame in 1996. And Scott Walker says to say hello as well. And you won the very prestigious Tip O'Neill Award throughout your career. Just share some thoughts on those accolades that you received for your baseball.
Again, I'm very, very fortunate to have played the game of baseball for as long as I did, and recognized for playing the game. I think that had it not been for a number of people along the way, that it wouldn't have there's that way. And I think that everyone is put on the earth for a reason, and there's no way that growing up in Cambridge, and especially at that time of that I should have been involved in baseball, because baseball really wasn't a very popular sport. Men's fast pitch in Cambridge anyway was way more popular, and it just worked out then. I was fortunate enough to be able to still be involved in the game. So very thankful for that, and I really don't know how to explain it.
When you look at the development system in Canada that was available to you or not available to you, I guess, as it may have been the case back then, versus the infrastructure that Baseball Canada and the Toronto Blue Jays in particular put into Ontario and Canada, is it night and day really in comparison?
Oh, there's no question. Jim Baba and Greg Hamilton of Baseball Canada have done a wonderful job in developing young players. They have so many more opportunities as far as going to college and university in the United States than we did. It was almost unheard of as far as a Canadian going to the United States to play baseball. That was, a handful of guys did that. Now it's very, very prevalent, and travel ball is huge. So that the grassroots program, maybe I was, obviously Ferguson Jenkins prior to me, and players after me, Larry Walker and Matt Stairs and guys like Paul Quantrell, and it goes on and on and on as far as the players after me. That the Canadians are now seen in a much, much different light as far as on the baseball field because of the job that Baseball Canada has done.
Rob, we're just about out of time, but just before we let you go, you bookended your career with Canadian teams. You started with the Jays, and you ended with the Montreal Expos for 27 games in 2001. What was it like to play for the Montreal Expos, being a Canadian guy, and how well were you received by the fans there?
Obviously, I was an older player at that time, and I enjoyed my time. It was cut short. I ruptured my Achilles in July of 2001. I wish that wouldn't happen, but that was kind of the dagger that ended it all. I wish that I would have had an opportunity to play there longer. It was, we had Vladimir Guerrero and Jose Vidro, and, some young, good players. Looking back, I think that it was a tremendous honor for me to be able to play for both the Blue Jays and the Expos. And that won't ever happen again because there's only the Blue Jays now. So being a Canadian and having an opportunity to play for both teams, I think Matt Stairs and Dennis Boucher, I believe, are the only other two. Am I correct?
Sean Hill, I believe, too.
Sean Hill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 of you in total, yeah.
Part of, that opportunity. I've been very, very blessed as far as the things that have happened to me and the opportunities given to me, and tried to take full advantage of them.
Well, thanks so much for talking to us, Rob. You've been fantastic sharing your insights. Now, you mentioned Fergie Jenkins there a moment ago. We're going to be discussing by position some of the top Canadians. So I think we're all going to agree that Fergie Jenkins was the greatest Canadian pitcher of all time. Who would you put in the number 2 and number 3 slots?
Golly, I'd have to go Larry Walker and probably Justin Morneau.
Morneau next. Nice.
Yeah.
We can add that in when we're fighting it out about the same topic in a few moments. Thank you so much for talking to us all the way from Florida. You've been fantastic, and all the best for the rest of the season.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
There you have it. Rob Ducey, the former Major Leaguer, of course, former Toronto Blue Jay player, a Cambridge, Ontario native. We'll take a break on Baseball Talk and be back with more right after this. Baseball Talk is brought to you by Lasting Memories Locker Room, downtown Hanover, where you will find incredible sports memorabilia, art supplies, and custom framing. Check them out online at lastingmemorieslockerroom.com.
Grey Bruce Brick and Landscape Supply in Hanover is this area's leader for all your interlocking stone and retaining wall solutions, including Canrock. They carry a wide selection of Arriscraft, Permacon, and cultured stone products for all your landscaping projects, as well as clay brick, carrying top quality products including Hanson. Your first choice for landscape, septic, and masonry products. Visit Grey Bruce Brick at 525 First Street in Hanover, 519-364-7778, or visit greybrucebrick.ca. Grey Bruce Brick and Landscape Supply, proudly serving the community for over 50 years.
Save instantly on energy-saving products such as LED light bulbs, power bars, dimmer switches, ceiling fans, and more with the Save on Energy coupon program. Visit your local Canadian Tire, Home Hardware, Rona, Giant Tiger, and TSC to save instantly. Or visit westereo.com to download the coupons of your choice. Coupons expire at the end of September, so catch the savings before they're gone. Save energy, save money with the Save on Energy coupon program. Go to westereo.com for details today.
You're ready to buy that special car, minivan, or SUV, but are worried about finding a reliable used vehicle. This is Greg Lamb of Lamb Auto in Hanover. Come in and take a look at our quality used cars. I personally drive each one to ensure your purchase is reliable and ready for years of great service. Let the experience of Lamb Auto get you that reliable vehicle you will love. Lamb Auto is in Hanover beside Norm's Restaurant or online at lambauto.ca.
Hi, I'm Chef Michael Smith, here to help Canadian families make healthy choices, easy choices. I know a healthy food lifestyle can seem complicated, but really, it's nothing fancy because simple cooking is healthy cooking. For instance, just fill half your plate with fruits and veggies. For lots more tasty tips and lots of great recipes, visit halfyourplate.ca.
Baseball Talk is brought to you by Lasting Memories Locker Room, downtown Hanover, where you will find incredible sports memorabilia, art supplies, and custom framing. Check them out online at lastingmemorieslockerroom.com.
And welcome back to Baseball Talk. I'm Paul Hillier along with Steve Fitzsimmons and Andy Clark as always. And for the second half of the show today, we have a little special thing we're going to do. We are going to be choosing our Canadian All-Star team. We're going to pick a player from each position, truly Canadian people, and we're going to see what we can come up with between the three of us. And Steve, if you want to lead us off.
You know, I just want to say thanks to Rob Ducey as well. How apropos that we have a Canadian baseball player that leads us into this topic, and we actually had this topic selected before we knew Rob Ducey would be coming on, but it was great of him to join us, and of course he shared his thoughts. And let's start with pitchers, and we'll do it first as starting pitchers and relievers. We'll break it down that way. But probably the best player to ever play in the major leagues that's a Canadian is Ferguson Jenkins, who was a starting pitcher, had a 284 and 226 career record, 3,192 strikeouts, which is the 12th most ever. And in 594 starts, guys, get this, 267 complete games. I mean, those numbers are just startling. And in an era when there was a lot more offense to baseball, he had a 3.34 earned run average in 4,500 and 2/3 career innings. I mean, he won the Cy Young in 1971 when he had a record of 24 wins and struck out 263 batters. So my starting pitcher in a no-brainer decision is Fergie Jenkins. Paul?
Yeah, and I think we've all got to agree on Fergie Jenkins. I mean, he was the first and the best.
And still is the best.
I came up with another one, a young guy that I watched play in the late 90s, early 2000s, Ryan Dempster. He played most of his time when I watched him for the Miami Marlins, who were the Florida Marlins back then.
So
and
you're talking as a sort of an honorable mention type of thing?
As an honorable mention, because we all know Fergie Jenkins was the best at it.
Yep.
He had a couple of All-Star appearances and spent 9 years with the Cubs in Florida.
He was certainly a serviceable,
very solid
Major League Baseball pitcher, yeah.
To piggyback in off of Fergie Jenkins first, and then I'll come around to Ryan Dempster, but we were mentioning that great physical specimen too. He's about 6'5", and I was reading that he sometimes would sit in with the Harlem Globetrotters in the off season. He's just a great all around athlete like that. Had 6 seasons consecutive of 20 plus wins, and he's one of only. Yeah.
What would he get paid today if he did that?
It'd be huge, eh?
Yeah.
And he's one of only 4 pitchers in Major League history to have more than 3,000 strikeouts and less than 1,000 walks. So you could just go on and on and on. With Ryan Dempster, a very serviceable starter there with his 132 wins, but he also had 87 saves along the way. So he actually had a substantial career as a reliever and a starter.
Great segue, Andy. So let's delve into relievers. And so my choice for the best reliever as a Canadian is Eric Gagne. And, I know, Andy, you're going to dispute that and you feel it's a little controversial because of some things that happened. But, he had 55 saves and 55 opportunities in 2003 with the Dodgers. Won the Cy Young Award that year with a microscopic 1.20. He was virtually unhittable. Let's be honest about it. He was unbelievable. And he had 152 saves he saved 152 games in 158 save situations from 2002 to 2004. In that 3-year period, he's probably the greatest reliever in the history of Major League Baseball. It certainly could be argued. He had elbow surgery and wasn't near the player after that, but he had a total of 187 saves, which is the top figure by far for any Canadian player.
That's a good arguable comment.
Yep.
I went with a slightly older guy, John Hiller, played from 1965 to 1980. At one time, he had the record in 38 saves for the season in 1973. I know that's been blown out of the water by now, but you go back to the baseball of that time, it was a different game altogether.
Yeah, they didn't really throw guys into save situations, as a deliberate sort of
And they were often
maneuver. 3
innings, They often had to pitch 3 innings for it.
Yeah, when you can pitch several three inning saves, you're doing really good for yourself. And he had a whip of 1.26, an ERA under 3. I mean, for that time period, that was a great relief pitcher at that time.
Yeah, he had one season where he had 17 wins as a reliever. And that's on top of the fact right in the middle of his career. He actually missed a season because he had a heart attack in 1971 and came back and continued on. So I also had John Hiller on there with an honorable mention to John Axford, who was the 2011 Rolaids Relief Award winner there. To cycle back to the Eric Gagne thing, and I've had the same thing I said about Roger Clemens, is I always think that, without the steroids, what would have happened then, right? So, for all we know, he might have been a AAA marginal major leaguer if he hadn't taken the artificial support and the artificial help. So,
the way I look at that era is everybody pretty well was on the stuff.
A lot of them did.
And, it was a leveling of the playing field for half of baseball, I think. And it's unfortunate for the guys that weren't, because they might have been stars and ended up only being a serviceable Major League Baseball player because of all these other guys. And I understand your argument, but I don't think we can say that he isn't,
when I see those guys who are on the roids, right, then you do think of the guy that maybe was a marginal big leaguer, never made the big money, slugged it out, decided to have the ethics, and then topped out at AAA and is out doing something else right now without all the accolades. And that's what, just from the sporting element, I tend to steer away from those steroid guys.
Okay, well, there you go. So let's move on to first base guys. And this gentleman still plays in the Major League Baseball. Joey Votto is the best first baseman in my estimation. He ranks 13th among all Major League Baseball batters in history in on-base average, which is interesting. He has 241 home runs and 809 runs batted in. His lifetime batting average recently was at 312. And although Justin Morneau has more career home runs and RBIs, I think Votto is probably going to surpass him, Larry Walker as well. Votto had a Gold Glove in 2011 as well, so he's a good player in the field, and he, of course, has participated in 4 All-Star games, and he was the National League Most Valuable Player in 2010 when he hit 37 home runs, had 113 runs batted in, and batted .324. So, this guy, he's led the National League in on-base percentage 5 times. I mean, this guy's a legitimate future Hall of Famer, I think, without question. And, a pretty easy selection for me to have him as our first baseman on the All-Canadian team.
And I have to agree with you on that. I mean, I'd like not to, but you know what it is. Joey Votto has had a great career so far, and he is, if he continues the way he's going right now, he's going to obliterate a lot of the numbers for Canadian players.
For sure.
I also gave honorable mention in this particular category to Matt Stairs.
Yep.
I was always a big fan of him, and some of the pitchers that he must have faced, they must have been just terrified watching that guy at the plate because he was a big, bulky guy. He could knock the ball out of the park, and he was just incredible to watch. Another guy, 250-plus home runs, over 800 RBIs in his career.
899, actually, one short of 900 RBIs.
Yeah.
Big shoulders on him, too. I mean, he could just get into a ball and
Pride of
obliterate
New Brunswick.
it.
He also has the record for actually most pinch hit home runs in Major League history. What is that, 23, 28? I don't even know. I don't have that number in front of me. I just know he has the record.
Yeah,
so.
that's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of good and bad, right? You were in that role because you maybe weren't good enough to play all the time, but you were good enough to do that. And also, maybe it reflects on, you were a veteran player that couldn't run very good anymore, and but you had that power. So I don't know how to read that particular accolade in a way, but
Matt played a lot of games in the outfield too, which is another consideration if we're talking about greatest first baseman. He played a fair bit of first base, but a lot of outfield too.
Right.
Yeah, he did.
I was going to tease Rob Ducey actually because that was a stat that shocked me when I was doing this. Is that Matt Stairs had 30 career steals and Rob Ducey only had 22.
Really?
Yeah. Which when you look at their frames, you wouldn't think that. But then it occurred to me Matt Stairs had a huge number of plate appearances.
You know what?
Yeah.
I mean, for people that, speaking of Rob Ducey, I mean, for people that didn't see Rob Ducey play, I mean, the comparable player, I guess, for me right now with the Jays is he was like Ezekiel Carrera type of thing. Would you guys agree?
Well-rounded, yeah.
Yep.
Different build, of course, but they play the same way.
But I mean, defensive replacement, had a bit of pop in his bat, had good speed, was he kind of the utility guy? He's kind of he was the Ezekiel Carrera of today type of thing back then for the Jays in my sort of estimation.
Yeah. And for first base, then I guess other honorable mentions, we obviously have to give it to Morneau.
Yeah, Justin Morneau, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a Freddie Freeman who was born and raised in the USA, but he had a dad from Peterborough and a mom from Windsor. He was a two-time All-Star, had more than 1,000 hits, 160 home runs, approaching 600 RBIs. So if you consider Freddie Freeman Canadian, he'd be in that conversation of really, really good Canadian first baseman.
He's still playing, is he not?
Freddie Freeman? No, he was a little. Or is he still playing? I think he is actually.
He plays for the Braves.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Interesting. So that's first base. So a general agreement on Joey Votto.
Yeah. And probably a future Hall of Famer. Yeah.
I think so.
And his stats are, in a lot of ways, very, very similar to Larry Walker's, too.
They are, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. But so when we move across the diamond to second base, we don't quite have the plethora of players to choose from that we have at some other positions. And so we have to dig all the way back to 1880 to 1891 to find Charles Pop Smith from Digby, Nova Scotia, who played in 1,112 Major League games, had over 1,000 hits, and had, interestingly enough, 169 career stolen bases. And they only logged stolen bases for about half of his career. So, that's only in the latter stages of his career. So he probably had more like 300 plus, but they didn't actually track that stat back then as a statistic. And, he was just basically a serviceable 250 type hitter, but defensively he's very good. And he had an interesting day on April 17th, 1890, when he reached base 6 times in 6 official trips to the plate without registering an at-bat. He had 5 walks and was hit by a pitch, so he reached base 6 times, and that was the first time that a player actually accomplished that. So we're reaching a little deep, but Charles Pop Smith is my second baseman, guys.
And you know why he was hit by the pitch on that time? Because that was probably the 6th at bat, and the pitcher probably figured he'd walked him 5 times. You may as well just give it to them this time.
Yeah, they weren't allowed just to grant them the base back then.
Yeah. Strangely enough, I actually stuck with a guy current for my second baseman, and it's mostly because of defensive capabilities. I went with Canadian Brett Laurie, who played for the Blue Jays. He was Josh Donaldson at third before Josh was a player. Not quite as much pop in the bat as Mr. Donaldson has, but he moved over to second base once Donaldson came in, and he was great defensively. He was lights out. Some pop in the bat. He had 71 home runs. Injuries, unfortunately, have ceased his career for the time being. He may be back or he may not be, but when they were ahead late in the game, he was the defensive guy to go to, and that's where I went.
Chicago almost exclusively used him at second base there.
Yeah.
His last season he played.
So that's where I went for second base.
Okay.
Andy?
Just to round out some other people that were in the conversation, but I agreed with Pop Smith. I also had him as number one. Mark Teahan I looked at. He was another case where he was born and raised in the USA and had Canadian parents. Now, I don't think he's quite eligible in the sense that he only became a Canadian in 2009, which was pretty much right in the middle of his career, and his numbers actually tailed off quite a bit after that. He represented us on the national team, and he just never quite played as well after that. Pete Orr obviously played a lot of games at second base, and David McKay was the only Canadian on the original Blue Jay team.
Yep.
And not spectacular numbers there, but they had decent major league careers.
Dave McKay, still a member of the coaching staff of the St. Louis Cardinals, actually, to this day. Certainly, and was a day one Toronto Blue Jay. So interesting. So we move over to shortstop, and again, we're reaching into the dearth of Major League Baseball to find the best player to ever play as a Canadian, and that would be Arthur Doc Irwin. And if you don't know who Arthur Doc Irwin is, I don't blame you at all, because he was a gifted shortstop over his 11-year Major League career, and he was a .241 hitter in 1,010 Major League games. But that was back in 1883. But the thing that people will remember mostly about Arthur Doc Irwin is he actually invented the use of a glove for playing in the field. And so he was playing for the Providence Grays in 1883 and broke 2 fingers on his left hand, and then used an oversized buckskin driving glove with a stuffed lining to shield the injury so that he wouldn't miss any games playing. These tough Canadians, right?
Yeah, tough and innovative too.
Innovative too.
Yeah.
And so he then sewed the 3rd and 4th fingers together in a padded glove, and suddenly everybody was using what they dubbed the Arthur Irwin glove. And here we are today. Of course, that's commonplace. Nobody plays without a glove, but it all came from Arthur Doc Irwin. So innovator, reasonable shortstop, not a superstar, but remembered probably more for the glove than anything else. But, he was a serviceable shortstop in Major League Baseball, guys.
Yeah, and he also was a minor league owner. He was a major league umpire, I believe, at some point. He was involved. He was a scout. He was a coach. He pretty much did everything in the game. And another interesting side note there, away from baseball, after he passed away, they found out that he was actually a bigamist, in that he had a wife and family in one city and another wife and family in another city, which they didn't find out until after he passed away.
He kept a pretty good secret then.
Yeah.
And I mean,
he must have been on the road all the time.
Well, and I guess the life of baseball, he would be on the road, right?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. And I spent a lot of time searching everywhere trying to find another shortstop to even to give honorable mention, and they just don't exist around here. So if you've got young people out there playing baseball growing up in Canada now and they can play shortstop, tell them to keep playing, because we need some Canadian shortstops to make our list for next year.
Because really, the second place, the honorable mention, would probably go to Kevin Nicholson, who in 2000 played a few games for San Diego, and he hit .216, had 1 home run and 8 RBIs.
Not exactly, a household name, but at least he made it. So
there is a young guy getting a lot of buzz. He was drafted early round, 2nd round by the Orioles, I believe, last year. Adam Hall is his name, and he's only had 9 at bats in the minors so far. But there's a lot of hype around him that he might be the next guy to claim the shortstop crown for Canadians.
Well, the crown has been waiting for him for a long time, so we'll see what happens with Adam Hall. We're going to take another break on Baseball Talk, and we'll be back with more right after this.
BWR 91.3, the place to be.
Baseball Talk is brought to you by Lasting Memories Locker Room, downtown Hanover, where you will find incredible sports memorabilia, art supplies, and custom framing. Check them out online at lastingmemorieslockerroom.com.
Here's something new for summer. It's Out of This World Fish and Chips at Riverside Campground and Store. That's at the corner of Concession 10 and Mulock Road at Crawford, just north from Highway 4 at the Bulldozer. Choose from their large menu, which includes hamburgers, footlongs with generous portions, all cooked especially for you, and then cool down with one of their great ice cream treats. Out of This World Fish and Chips are open Monday to Saturday, 11:30 till 2, and from 4:30 till 8. Fish and chips are closed Wednesday and then Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Pre-orders can be taken at 519-369-5369. This area's best fish and chips. They're out of this world and just a short summer drive from anywhere.
Join us in Hanover this summer. We've got an experience for you. Enjoy live music, harness racing and theater, play the slots, or family recreational activities. Tour our vibrant downtown featuring great shopping and events. Taste our locally brewed, handcrafted beer and the many dining options. This is just a snapshot of what awaits you.
See Cunio's Carpet One Floor and Home for all your ceramic tile projects.
Discover more at hanover.ca.
Bruce and Gray counties are amazing places to live, but sometimes they can be difficult to get around and explore. That's where Soggy Mobility and Regional Transit comes in. Since 1977, they've specialized in public transit service to those with permanent or temporary mental and physical challenges within Bruce and Gray counties. Finally, you have the ability to stay mobile. Life can be challenging. Let Soggy Mobility help. To find out more about smart services in your area or to register, visit soggymobility.ca and they'll see you soon.
Tired of hard water wreaking havoc around your home? Dry skin and lifeless hair? Dull and dingy laundry? Soap scum and spotted glasses too?
Hey, Culligan man! A Culligan water softener turns hard water soft every time. Soft water is the answer. Not cleaning products or detergents. Culligan saves you up to 50% on soaps and detergents while turning your laundry, bathroom, and kitchen brilliant, like me. Hey, Culligan man!
This is Adam.
And Jen Olivero.
Join us Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Blue Water Radio for what's happening in Hanover.
On the show, we feature local businesses, nonprofit organizations, and residents to discover new events and discover interesting things to do in and around the area.
That's What's Happening in Hanover with Jen and Adam Olivero, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Blue Water Radio and on Whiteman TV, Channel 6.
Baseball Talk is brought to you by Lasting Memories Locker Room, downtown Hanover, where you will find incredible sports memorabilia, art supplies, and custom framing. Check them out online at lastingmemorieslockerroom.com. Welcome back into the Baseball Talk studios in lovely Hanover, Ontario. I'm Steve Fitzsimmons along with Paul Hillier and Andy Clark, and we're just running down the greatest Canadian baseball players by position of all time. And of course, we were pleased to have Rob Ducey join us in the first half hour of our show, the former Blue Jay, Montreal Expo, and of course a Canadian himself from Cambridge, Ontario. So very apropos to have him in this episode. But as we move along to look at third base, it's a position that there wasn't a lot of depth there either, guys, in terms of superstar players that played as a Canadian. And the guy I have is Corey Koski, and he did play in 989 career games, had 124 home runs, 506 runs batted in his 9 Major League Baseball seasons. His best year was probably 2001. He scored 100 runs, had 26 home runs, batted in 103 with the Twins, stole 27 bases, and had a career average that year of 275 in batting average. So, and he hit 300 twice in his career, played with the Blue Jays a little bit, but really, was kind of an injured player by the time he rolled around at that situation. And it really, he rounded up with the Milwaukee Brewers when he suffered a concussion to end his career. So, I think when you think of Corey Koski, it's maybe what could have been had he stayed a little more healthy. He was a good player. He was a talented player, but his numbers would have been, I think, greatly enhanced had he just stayed a little bit healthier, guys.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see what he could have accomplished in the next 9 years if he didn't have all the injuries to deal with.
Right.
Yes, yeah, the pride of Enola, Manitoba there, but I agree. Career cut short, but he definitely stands out. There's no argument he's the best Canadian third baseman at this point.
So we moved to catcher, and again, this is a position where I have Russell Martin, the current Toronto Blue Jays catcher. Of course, we know he's a Canadian from Montreal, Quebec, and he's probably, for me, one of the best 10 or 15 catchers of all time in terms of batting and fielding categories. And when he hangs things up, I think his numbers will put him in that sort of stead. He has 169 home runs currently and 705 runs batted in just over 1,500 career games and 6,000 at bats. And he's also one of the few catchers that has both power and speed. I mean, we know, he's had over 100 career stolen bases. 6 times in his career, he's thrown out more would-be base stealers than any other catcher in the league. So defensively, I mean, he's a stopper as well. He has a Gold Glove to his credit in 2007 with the Los Angeles Dodgers and 4 All-Star games. And you know what? Another stat that he leads all Canadians in history in is 57 career games played in the postseason, which is by far the biggest total among all Canadian players in history.
And we know which teams we have to thank for that.
Yes, we do.
A
little bit with the Toronto Blue Jays.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with this. I mean, I didn't come across too many other catchers either that would have been able to take that title away from him. So Russell Martin is also my choice.
So here's a question for Russell Martin then. Given his offensive numbers are really good, but they're not superstar,
right?
But he is spectacular defensively, as you said, throwing out runners and all of that. Is he going to be in the conversation for Hall of Fame?
I think he's just below the conversation for Hall of Fame, but you never know. I mean, if he can get firmly offensively entrenched as, in that 12 to 15 range for offensive statistics, then I'd say yes. He's not there yet. I'm projecting out over his career, but if he can continue the pace he's had, which I don't think he can, as what we've seen this year, but if he is able to kind of re-ratchet up his offense, then yes, I'd say yes.
But definitely a contender for the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame.
He's an automatic.
Yeah, he's a lock.
He's a lock there for sure. Yeah. Okay, so let's move to outfielders, and I have a trio of outfielders, and I know you guys will chime in as well. And my 3 are Larry Walker, Terry Poole, and Jason Bay. So let's start with Larry Walker. I mean, he's probably the greatest offensive player as a Canadian in history. There's no question about that. He had 383 home runs, 1,311 runs batted in, a career .313 hitter. And, he had a 400 on-base percentage, 7 Gold Gloves defensively, 3 batting titles offensively, and was the NL MVP, and he was a multiple-time All-Star. This guy could do it all. He was Mr. Everything. He had an 18-year career. He played, of course, for the Montreal Expos as well, which was nice and represented them at the All-Star game. But, he was just Mr. Consistency, really, guys, when I think about Larry Walker.
Yeah, he could do everything. And, even defensively, he wasn't the liability that some outfielders are that have the powers that he had. He was good in the outfield. He had a great number.
He was a 5-tool player.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
So he's definitely the number 1 outfielder out of the Canadian players.
So then I have Terry Poole.
Sorry, before we leave Larry Walker, though,
Sure.
I do have to say he's not in the Hall of Fame yet. And
but he will be.
It's a bit of a travesty because he's been passed over quite a few times now, and they need to get on that. Like, this past year, I think, what was it? He only got like 20% of the support he needed, or whatever, 20% of the votes. He needs to be in the Hall of Fame.
He does.
Agree. And he will be, I believe. So Terry Poole is a guy I have on my list. He had a 15-year career, largely known for the Houston Astros. He was probably a better fielder than he was a hitter. In fact, he had the highest fielding percentage of any outfielder in Major League history when he retired, which at that time was .993, which has since been broken. But I think it's safe to say he was one of the best defensive outfielders in the history of the game. He was like a vacuum out there, sort of like Devon White that way. And he was very good in the postseason. He had .372 average in 13 games in the National League Championship Series. He was a .280 career hitter with 1,361 base hits in his 1,531 games. So he also had 217 stolen bases. So, solid but unspectacular, but a good, solid player, Terry Poole.
And when we've touched on Larry Walker, it's hard to put second and third in because they are at quite a distance
it's a drop
away.
Off, yeah.
I didn't have Terry in my top 3. Probably my second guy would be Jeff Heath.
Okay.
He played in the 30s and 40s, so a lot of people are not going to know the name, but I like guys that can do everything, like the speed, the extra base hits. Home runs and that are great, but Jeff Heath did a little bit of everything. He had 279 doubles, over 100 triples in his career, just shy of 200 homers, and just shy of 900 RBIs. With a .293 average for his career, and in 14 years, that's pretty good. He played for an Atlanta Braves team that was probably not the best at the time. So when you can put up numbers like that with a mediocre team, you're doing pretty well, especially because baseball is such a different game today than it was then.
Yeah, he's certainly in the conversation. We just have a few minutes left here, guys. My other guy was Jason Bay, and his career totals were 222 home runs and 754 runs batted in. He had a 266 average and 95 stolen bases. Originally drafted by the Montreal Expos, but fate was not with him, where he ended up getting traded, and he ended up debuting for the Pittsburgh Pirates, where he batted .306 with 32 home runs and 101 runs batted in. And also had 21 stolen bases and 22 attempts, which led him to be the NL Rookie of the Year for the Pirates that year. So, solid, unspectacular, just a decent career, but had some good spikes there and started off like a house on fire.
I had Larry Walker and Jason Bay too. I gave Matt Stairs the nod over Terry Poole, just because they had almost the exact number of hits. Matt Stairs had 5 more hits in his career, but he had 200 more home runs and almost double the RBIs. So just on the offensive stats, I gave that.
Sure.
And I want to throw out the name of Tip O'Neill, which is the award for the best Canadian in the major leagues, gets every year. And he actually was a player back from 83 to 92.
And we mentioned Rob Ducey won that award.
Ducey won it. And George Selkirk 5 times hit over 300, going way back for that one, but I'd have to say George Selkirk definitely in the conversation.
Well, George won 5 World Series, so I mean, that's a big deal, even though it is almost 100 years ago now.
And he had to replace Babe Ruth as the Yankees right fielder, so he had
talk about pressure,
big shadow to emerge from.
Just in the final minute here, guys. We talked off air, and I mentioned this question. We'll throw it out to our viewers and listeners. What is the most Canadians position players ever to be on a major league team at the same time? So I'll give you a second to think about that. The answer is 3, and it was with the Toronto Blue Jays in April 2015, and that was Russell Martin, Dalton Pompey, and Michael Saunders. So there you go.
So that was the most on the field at the same time.
Yeah, that is correct. And not including pitchers, because that happens off and on here.
I wonder what the record for most on a roster at the same time is.
Yeah, I don't know on that, but it's probably 4 maybe or something. Who knows? Yeah. Like I'm thinking there might have been a pitcher on a roster like that.
I wonder if the Jays back in the early '90s they had Rich and Rob Butler. I think at the same time as Rob Ducey. So I don't know if they had anyone beyond those 3 on the roster. They certainly wouldn't be on the field at the same time though.
Not at all. Yeah, it's hard to say, but you know what? There's been some great Canadians playing Major League Baseball, guys, and this was a good episode to sum them up, and also. We want to thank Rob Ducey, the former major leaguer with both the Jays, Montreal Expos, and elsewhere, Canadian as well, for joining us right here on Baseball Talk. We'll be back with more next week in the studios of Baseball Talk.
You're listening to CFBW 91.3 FM, Blue Water Radio, broadcasting from Hanover, Ontario. Blue Water Radio is owned and operated by Blue Water Community Radio Incorporated. 91.3 FM. Our community, your station.
Hi folks, I'm Carol Baker, and you're listening to the best in music on 91.3 FM, Blue Water Radio.
Thank you for watching Baseball Talk. Be sure to tune into the live show every Wednesday at 6 p.m. on 91.3 FM, Blue Water Radio, and watch the video replay every Friday night at 8 p.m. on Whiteman TV, Channel 6.
The preceding program was brought to you by Whiteman TV and Bruce Telecom.